Hi everyone, this week I am presenting on memory and schematization. So to begin, a couple questions to consider are: one, what do we remember and why do we remember some things and not others? Two, how does our brain categorize information and is this a conscious or subconscious process? Three, what is a schema and how does your schema impact how you process and store information? And four, what influences your schema and can your schema be changed with new information? All of these questions I'm hoping to address in this presentation. So key terms. First, we have memory. Memory provides the basis for our adaptation to the environment and serves as a workspace in which we can carry out many of our moment-to-moment cognitive activities. So in memory, you have the long-term store, the short-term store, sensory store, and working memory. Long-term store is information that has been processed as important, and so it gets stored for long-term remembrance. Short-term store is in that working memory where you remember it for the short amount of time, and it's either decayed or it's put into long-term store. Sensory store includes echoic memory and iconic memory. I think of this as echoic is an echo. It's information or stimuli that you hear, and iconic memory is iconic. It is what you see. And then working memory is the central executive system that determines what tasks are completed and when. So in this working memory, all of your information is being input and processed and determined, okay, short-term, long-term memory. And working memory, I will go over a little bit later on the next slide. Next, you have schema. Understanding the schema is the first part to understanding schematization. So schema is like that picture on the first page with the big pair of glasses. It is the lens through which you see the world, see yourself, and process any incoming information. And with your schema, there's assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is when you have your set of beliefs about the world and what you believe to be true about the world. And if you have new information coming in that challenges your pre-existing schema, but you do not change your schema to fit the incoming information, that's assimilation. Opposite of that is accommodation. So you have your set schema, but then when you have new information that challenges your schema and your schema adjusts accordingly, it's accommodating. And then schematization, it is mirroring the two, memory and schema. And that is how our schema influences what we remember and how we remember it. And with this is script, which is kind of what we anticipate to happen or what we kind of put together, even if all the information isn't there. And then you also have conservation and innovation of details when you're intaking information and recalling it. And this I will also go over in the next couple slides. So the first part, working memory. So this is encoding and construction. This is when we're taking in the information, and there you have our schema, which is the filter through which we use for the incoming information. And then the boss of this whole process is the central executive, and that directs attention and where things are stored. And with that, it goes to either the phonological loop, which is verbally oriented material, or it goes to the visuospatial sketchpad, which is visually oriented material. And from those, once information is processed and getting categorized, then it comes together and goes through the episodic buffer, which combines the two sensory inputs and creates a single memory trace. The next process is retrieval and reconstruction of memories. So from that memory trace, you might draw back on a memory. And so from that, there's this whole process of reconstructing that memory. And from that single memory trace, you have information from the original stimulus, aka what actually happened, and then you have prior knowledge and schema. So what you believe about the things that you experienced. And in that is the conservation and innovation of detail. So conserving the facts, what actually happened, and then innovation of details is the details you remember. And that is really unique to each person because we all have a different schema. So we're all going to pay attention to something a little bit different or have a different perspective on even the same event. And from that, from what actually happened and the schema, the way in which we first encoded that information, it's going to come together to be our reconstruction of the original event, which is not going to be 100% verbatim because of the fact that we pick up on certain details based on our schema, and different people will pick up and remember things differently. And so they will reconstruct the memory of an event differently. Some key takeaways. Number one, we pay attention to stimuli that are important to us, what we anticipate to happen or appear, which is script, and what catches our attention by the way it looks, sounds, etc. Next is we remember details about experiences based on what captures our attention, same idea, but what captures our attention can be influenced by our schema. So for example, if your favorite color is pink, you're going to be seeing pink flowers in the midst of all the other colored flowers. Or if you really like a certain type of truck, you're going to be seeing that way more often when you're driving through traffic than any other kind of car, because that's what captures your attention. And then third, our schema is the filter through which our brains determine what information is important to store and remember. And our schema can be better understood when reflecting on experiences and paying attention to what we remember about those experiences. This is why people have different recollections of the same event. So this is really cool. This is something you can practice in your own life. You can sit down with someone who was at the same event as you or had the same experience, and you guys can both write down what you remember about that event and then compare what you remembered, what details stuck out to you. A fun example could be maybe a party or a wedding you were at. So, compare what you remembered. Maybe one of you remembers how good the food was and the other person remembered how fun the dancing was. And that's totally dependent on the person. That ties with personality, which ties in with schema, which ties in with memory. Another thing I thought about when researching these topics is the gospels that we read in the Bible. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all four of them are essentially covering the whole life and ministry of Christ. And they don't contradict each other, but they all pick up on different details about that experience and who Christ was. And there is so much beauty and a greater understanding of who he was because we have four different perspectives. So just something to think about. I hope you guys learned lots, and I look forward to hearing your guys' presentations. Thank you very much.